With me now is Nekima Levy-Armstrong. She's an award-winning civil rights attorney. She's the former president of the NAACP's Minneapolis chapter. She was instrumental in making the chief of police aware of the George Floyd case last year. She's the one who texted him and says, "You seen this video?" Nekima, how are you feeling? You have been involved. You knew about George Floyd before most Americans did. You saw that video very, very early on. You let the world know about it. How are you feeling about this sentence?
I think that the sentence was too light in light of what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd. We essentially witnessed a modern day lynching on May 25th of 2020. And so the judge had an opportunity to send a message by sentencing Derek Chauvin to at least 30 years in prison. The maximum that he could have received was 40 years in prison. Minnesota is a determinate sentencing state, which means that Derek Chauvin will only serve 2/3 of the 22 and a half years in prison, which is roughly 15 years. So the last portion of his sentence will be spent under supervised release, which means he can be out in the community with his family and enjoying his life.
Do you take some solace in the fact that the federal government has now gotten involved and putting civil rights, human rights charges on this?
Absolutely. It's long overdue for the federal government to be involved, number one, in investigating the Minneapolis Police Department through the DOJ's patterns and practices investigation that is now happening with regard to the Minneapolis Police Department. But beyond that, I am thankful to know that federal civil rights charges have been filed against Derek Chauvin, as well as the other 3 former officers who were involved in the murder of George Floyd. So my hope is that through that process, Derek Chauvin will have a much lengthier prison term than the one that was handed down by Judge Peter Taylor.
Nekima, how much does this change in our world? Much has changed in the last year. There's no question about it. There are, I think Chris Stewart, the attorney, was right. And he said there are conversations going on between white people and black people that just didn't happen before May of last year. There are conversations going on in the Senate that might actually lead to some sort of a deal on the Justice in Policing Act. What changes in your mind as a result of both this conviction and the sentence?
Well, I think that the changes that took place had a lot to do with, of course, the world taking to the streets to stand up for justice for George Floyd. 26 million people at least took to the streets within the last year. And folks in various jurisdictions also applied pressure to their local government officials. And so for the first time, we saw New York City in qualified immunity. We saw the state of Maryland overturn its police officers' Bill of Rights. And we have seen some police departments that have lost funding as a result of their previous behavior, as well as the voluminous portions of their city budgets that have been used on police departments. Additionally, we've seen corporations say that they're going to focus more on diversity and inclusion, but the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day. We need for the federal government to take action to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, to pass the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, as well as to focus on reparations for the descendants of those who were enslaved in this country. So there is a lot of work to do. It's important that we reset our expectations and understand that the whole system is not going to change based upon one officer being convicted, but this is a conviction that we can celebrate because it's been a long time in the making, and George Floyd represents many victims who never got justice and never saw any accountability as a result of being killed by law enforcement.
Nekima, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us. Nekima Levy-Armstrong is an award-winning civil rights attorney and the former president of NAACP's Minneapolis chapter.